Hey everyone, this is Daniel with Socratic Hobbits. On this episode, we talk about creating your own area of expertise. Please enjoy. People who are putting projects out to bid right now are getting a screaming deal.
Huh. Yeah. That's just interesting because this is a totally different market, obviously, but over here, construction for residential housing is so far behind that all the contractors are booked out over a year.
Wow. Sounds like there's some
And
money to be made.
there is and there isn't, because the issue is the contractors have trouble finding enough labor.
Yeah, we have that issue. We've had that issue for a while. More than a year, more than 2 years. Part of the reason that apprenticeships are required in Washington, I believe if your project is over $1 million and is funded by either the state or federal government, you're required to have 15% of your workers apprentices, which works really well for some trades and then others not as good. Because why would you apprentice if you were a truck driver? You get paid less. Typically, to become a journey level truck driver, you take a 2-week course and pay $1,000.
Oh,
Like, and then you're a journey level
yeah.
and make the same as people who've been doing it for 40 years. I mean, obviously not, but
But talking about being an apprentice or becoming a truck driver and how that works could be a decent segue into Scott Adams' discussion of becoming 75th percentile at three things and creating your own game.
yeah, do you want to? So, we're doing a new kind of format here, and we're going to focus pretty much this entire discussion that we're having here on Socratic Hobbits. I don't know why I'm like suddenly talking to an audience now, but
Well, it's good to explain what the transition is.
yeah, absolutely. So we had feedback that we're just basically going to be trying to be more focused. And so you and I are going to try to spend most of this time talking about, well, basically Scott Adams, who's the author of Dilbert, suggested that we suggest not he suggested to me and Kyle that we become in the 75th percentile, which is just you're better than 75% of people at three different things, and by doing so, you become in the top like 1% of those three things combined. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, you nailed it. And the only thing I'd add to that is by doing that, you essentially create your own skill that you are one of the most competitive people at. So instead of, just to elaborate a little bit more on that, like there are a lot of people that can be 75th percentile in one thing and 75th percentile in another thing. But when you just do the math, run the numbers on what it would take to be 75th percentile in two or three overlapping things, you get down to a very small percentage of the world's population.
So like would you can you think of any examples off the top of your head?
Yeah, and one of the examples comes from a book that I think may be useful to discuss as part of this podcast, which is the last safe investment, by Brian Franklin and Michael something.
Michael something. Okay. I'll find that in a
Michael
second here.
Ellsberg.
Ellsberg. Good old Michael Ellsberg, who we both know pretty well.
We know neither of them, but this is kind of a cool thing to. Well, that's going down another rabbit trail. So, generally speaking, Daniel's the one who keeps us on task, and I
Is that
jump
so?
all over.
Is
the
that
place.
so? I don't
I
think
think
that's
you do a
I
little
don't
bit
think
better
that's the
than me.
case.
But anyway, they have this book called The Last Safe Investment, which is really about investing in yourself and
Mm-hmm.
developing your skills. And they have an example in there of a guy who was working sort of not a super menial job, but not a job that you'd expect someone to make a lot of money at. And in that job, he decided to teach himself some stuff about market research, and then he learned about a particular field that he was interested in, and then he learned the technical aspect of that field, and then he taught himself some of the basics for person to person sales, phone sales, And so he was 75th percentile in understanding the market. He was 75th percentile in understanding the technical details of that market. And then he was 75th percentile in person to person sales, selling over the phone. And so because he understood the market from the perspective of people who were involved in the market, he understood the technical side. So he understood what difficulties people had, what pain points people had in the market, and he understood some of the psychology of sales decently well. He was able to do very well for himself as a salesman in that particular market.
Okay. Yeah. So if you were to, I'm going to push just a tiny bit more. Like if you were to actually say somebody who's good at spreadsheets and then also somebody who's good at sales, like those
Why
two
would
would
you bring up those two things?
uh, well, Kyle, they might be particularly well suited for, well, I don't know, but you would combine those skills into something that would be really unique because a lot of people aren't good at spreadsheets and sales, or maybe there are, but fewer people than are good at
One or the other.
one or the other. Sure, because each would be a subset, and then you add something, a third thing in there, and yeah, and then you get into even a much smaller subset. Whereas like
Mm-hmm.
I am, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but just go ahead and put it out there. I'm good at spreadsheets, but I
Yep.
have seen people, I've seen stuff on uh online when looking at forums, and like I know that when I'm at a workplace, I'm typically like there's a pool of 50 to maybe 150 people. And in that group, I might be the top 1 to 5 people at,
Mm-hmm.
at
Well,
that.
in just that one example, Daniel, you've actually created a subset for yourself. So you've got the one subset of the people in your work environment, and then you've got the subset of people who are good at spreadsheets or specifically Excel. So you could say a third subset would be the group in that company, and then the third subset is people who are um, uniquely competent at spreadsheet usage. And so you've put yourself in kind of that place where you've got yourself in a place where you're in the top 1 to 3 people in that subset.
Yeah.
And so it's a very visible way. And my guess is people can kind of run that same exercise for themselves and look at many work environments that people are in and go, okay, this is this is the workplace I'm in, this is the group I'm in. What unique attributes or what unique skills do I have that really stand out in this setting? And that's sort of your, on a micro scale, your 75th percentile in 3 things
Hmm.
at
Yeah.
work.
Well, I do think that the point of the 75th percentile, I'm just going to shorthand that to like your niche. The point
Yep.
of having a niche
Yeah.
in 3 different things
Hmm.
is that you would be in that top 1% in a much larger group than 200 people.
Right. Right.
And by doing that, you're creating something that's, by investing in yourself in that way, you're creating a just basically a value proposition to many more people, or more likely to the people that you would want to.
Hmm.
And so by creating the niche in those three things, like you can, I don't know, like that's a way to become more valuable than you basically could by focusing on just one thing, and
Right.
not and
Right.
not by creating subsets within your environment that can change, so like i.e. like your company. Does that make sense?
Right, right. And
Okay.
I only brought up the company because it's a really, I guess, easy thing for someone to visualize today.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
but getting what you brought up, something about value, which I think a good example that came to my mind there is the person who's most valuable on, say, a basketball team is not the person who's really specialized in 3-point shooting, or not the person who's the defensive specialist. It's the person who can play both offense and defense. And they aren't just a shooter, they can also make other people better by setting them up to score.
Mhm.
And so you have those three skills, of defense, of scoring, and of giving assists that make what is considered to be a complete player on the basketball court. And as a result, is the most highly valued player on the basketball court, as opposed to someone who even has just a couple of those things. They aren't going to get the same level of contracts that someone who has all three of those traits will get.
So are there like particularly big names? Would they be a complete like LeBron James? Um,
LeBron James is particularly known for being able to, not just pass and play defense, or not just score and play defense, but his one of the things he prides himself on is his ability to set other players up. I mean, down to the minutia of knowing how another player likes the ball to spin into his hands off of a pass in a
hmm,
particular corner of the court.
that would be interesting to have that kind of attention as a teammate of LeBron James.
Right.
I say that like
Well, wouldn't that make you want to play with him? I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely. Um, I don't. That just kind of brings to mind my wife and I. I'm gonna get it. One of these episodes, I'm gonna go a whole way without saying her name. Um, is we earlier? I don't know. It might have been 6 months ago. We watched. It was a BBC take on the first football club to pay their players
okay.
in England. So this was I don't know. I mean, it was around the Industrial Revolution anyway.
Right.
But the one of the main characters who's supposed to be this, fantastic ball player and is him and his
Mhm.
very good friend get essentially drafted into this. They're supposedly working for this textile company,
Right, right.
and but really they're just there to play soccer.
Yeah.
And he gets drafted another time into another company and is pretty overtly being paid, but his friend doesn't, and he's just like he can't work with like his friends set him up constantly to be to help him get the ball downfield and score, and
Right.
he was a very good striker, but it was his friend who was able to get the ball to him in the right
Uh-huh.
spot, and there was nobody like that on the new team. And until basically his friend was drafted, then um
Uh-huh.
he was a poor player anyway. But that's see, now I've gotten us off topic off of figuring out your niches. So did you come up with do you want to talk about what you think your skills are, or how you came up with that? I've got some
How I came up with what?
so you had said in our podcast, which the only reason I know this is because I was just editing it, but we talked about coming up with things we thought we might be skilled at,
Mhm.
and then talking about how others might do the same, and in order to kind of figure out what you may or may not be uniquely like what three things you could perhaps combine. did you
Mhm.
did you do anything related to that, or no, not really?
Well, I thought of a few things that I know I have interests in, and I kind of broke it down a little bit, according to the super skills listed out in the last safe investment.
Mm-hmm.
And so the super skills are broken down into four categories: physical super skills, technical super skills, creative super skills, and interpersonal super skills. And
What were some physical ones? I didn't see that in the book review that you had linked to.
mental focus, clean and organized work environment, clean appearance. I'm actually just reading the abridged list of super skills from the link I sent.
Oh, I see.
It's just kind of one little section, so it's pretty easy to
Yeah.
zoom by.
Mm-hmm.
But so as far as technical super skills go, I think it's at least where I'm at right now. Those skills would come down to problem solving in engineering, and understanding engineering top tech, technical topics, specifically around mechanisms and mechanics of materials. And then as far as the interpersonal super skills go, I think the skill that I've gotten to exercise a little bit, that I've been continuing to try and develop. It's actually a very easy one, potentially easy one to develop as a parent, is the super skill of teaching.
Mm.
So helping people achieve their potential in a particular area. And then the creative super skill that I was looking at was actually writing. And one of the ways I kind of have exercised that, actually at work recently, we had a request come down to write up a summary of what our team had been working on for a weekly newsletter that our group puts out. And so I volunteered to do that, which everyone on my team was very grateful that volunteered to do that.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's sort of
sure.
it was very much a win-win where I got to practice a little bit, and it was part of my job, and no one else wanted to do it.
What looks like work to others but play to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of that's a quote from I think Naval.
Yep,
Uh, R.
Ravikant.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, I was just listening or going back through and re-listening to his Tweet Storm podcast.
That was a good one. I've listened to that a second time through.
Yeah, I need to listen through it actually taking notes. That I mean,
Mm,
that's one of the things he points out is that you or any of us, if we really want to learn something, we really shouldn't just try and absorb it through osmosis. And I read this somewhere else recently as it was it was actually through the Tim Ferriss show. He was not the Tim Ferriss show, but Tim Ferriss put out a kind of secondary podcast called Tribe of Mentors that was part of setting up his book
mhm.
by the same name. And in that, someone made the point, one of the mentors from the Tribe of Mentors made the point that if you really want to accelerate learning, don't try and just learn it while it's in the background of your mind, but really focus on learning it and
Mhm.
leave other things aside. Actually, I take that back. It was not from that. The concept was probably in someone from that. It was actually in I was at my parents' place, and my dad subscribes to Inc. magazine, and
Oh,
they had interviewed a guy in Inc. and he had this acronym FAST for how to learn things quickly. And
seems like a good
yeah, it was
acronym.
and one of the letters in that what had to do with it wasn't F. F was forget. So and I need to go back and actually study it instead of just skimming through it. But
Mm.
he he pointed out on one of the letters, one of the AST letters, that it was important to actually, maybe S was study, and it was important to actually put the time into studying something as opposed to just hoping that you'd sort of get the knowledge into you slowly. If you
Yeah.
want to learn something quickly, like you can get the knowledge into you just by sort of absorbing it. But if you really want to ramp up on something quickly, you have to put in the work.
Yeah. It's kind of part of the idea is like if you want to learn something, then don't treat it like entertainment.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So what did you I hope I'm not having just like a brain fart right now, but did you share what you thought you were skilled at?
So it was mechanical engineering, teaching, and writing.
Teaching and writing? Oh, see, I came up with a list of like 20 things and just like I didn't use that I'll just read them out loud.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that I'm the most skilled. I did try to write down what percentile I was in them.
Uh huh.
And even though these
Okay, so just to kind of clarify here, these are things you actually view yourself as being proficient in to various levels,
Mhm.
or are these things that you would like that are aspirational,
So
or is it a mix?
this might surprise you. I've I did this in Excel
Uh huh.
and I did a what percentile I think I'm in, and this was just off the cuff, right? And
Yeah.
then the difficulty in increasing that, so going up in percentile,
Hmm.
and then natural interest, yes or no, as a different column.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I know that surprised you. You were like, "Wow, Daniel."
Can you share this on the screen?
Yeah, I can
Do you
try.
want to share it on the screen?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing it.
Okay.
I'm gonna read through it, but let me
I
know
think
if
it'd be
you.
really cool for everyone who watches the video to be able to see this.
No, I'm not gonna do that. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so these aren't actually, it kind of it sounds like at the very beginning that they're in a particular order, but they're in an order of natural interest, and then percentile. Anyway, so
So
Microsoft
is it scale of 1 to 3?
for difficulty and increasing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And the natural interest is interested, not interested.
Yeah. Probably should have just been 1 and 0, not 1 and 2. But what are you gonna do? Microsoft Excel, problem solving, logic, public speaking, VBA specifically related to Excel.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Visual Basic as its own language, and I don't know about that very much.
It's very similar.
Yeah. Editing podcasts, systematizing, which I think actually probably relates more to business processes, and those are
So is
pretty.
that operations?
Yeah, probably be operations, but where you have. When I wrote that, what I was thinking was, um, many different times in my career, I have had to sit down with somebody who has no standard operating procedures, and come up with them whole cloth.
Okay.
So, and I create systems for myself all the time when I think it will help. And
So how is this different than business processes? I think that'll help us understand kind of what you're.
I think systematizing is probably just more broad.
Because it's interesting that you
Separated them.
are not interested in business processes, but you are interested in systematizing. I, I'm just curious about this.
I think it's probably I'll have to think about that. I'm just gonna keep going. Writing and reading, humor, teamwork, creativity, woodworking, learning new software, business processes, which I'm apparently not interested, but I am interested in systematizing. Huh.
Which you
Uh,
described as a business process.
let's not let's not get focused on details. Um, Negotiation, typing, understanding concepts, which is maybe anyway.
Well, let's keep going through it, and then we can go visit these.
Editorialize later. Decision making, troubleshooting, sales, organizing, data visualization, and detail oriented. I think that's a weakness of mine, which probably has to do with not as much a workplace, but just like my workplace is actually very clean. But it's like being very detail oriented about certain things. Like I'll just look over things. Um, which if you've texted with me much, you notice that I'll send typos often. I think this last one I sent you 3. I was just frustrated. I was a little frustrated because I know how to spell. I'm a good speller actually.
That is
Uh,
interesting because I don't really think of that as being. I just as you're describing that, I think for myself, I tend to think of myself as not being detail oriented, but I tend to be pretty obsessive about, at least more obsessive about my texts and emails than I think other people I know are.
mm,
But
it depends on the tone,
but I
and who I'm talking with.
yeah, but
Anyway,
I just think I define detail oriented as like
what
things
am I?
I'm not interested in are the things that require being detail oriented. And then
Let's have an example.
so well, I mean the email is one example where I am interested in it, so I will be detail oriented. But if I'm reading like a so you mentioned having a really clean desk, and I don't make any attempt to keep things very neat and tidy in my workspace.
See, I just throw stuff out, and you 99.5% of the time that's totally fine. And then I wipe off my desk every couple of days. But compared to a lot of people, that's like 100% more effort than people do, and I don't know why. But also in a construction setting, it's super dusty,
Uh-huh.
and so people's desks get gross. Like it's nasty, and so I just don't want to be. I don't want that to be my workspace.
So it's almost like cleanliness is,
Probably a little more important to me.
yeah,
Yeah, probably.
a skill of yours.
Yeah, maybe. Don't tell my wife that though. Uh, do you want to keep looking at the screen
I'm honestly, I'm really curious about the systematizing and business
and
processes.
business
Like
processes? You want me to
I
account for myself?
well, no, it's not that I want you to account for yourself. I'm just curious what you're thinking of when you think of systematizing. Because when I heard systematizing, I was thinking of more like systematic thinking or mental models.
hmm Yeah, and that is definitely
And then you
something.
went more business processes, which was something that you said you weren't interested in. So that's kind of what I guess triggered my questions is I was thinking one thing and then you described it as another thing,
hmm
which seemed very similar to something else you had on here.
Sure, sure.
That
Yeah.
was
So
yeah.
I I think probably when I wrote that, I was thinking kind of along the lines of what you've just laid out.
Okay.
Where like, yeah, mental models would be a good example of something I do enjoy.
Hmm.
But even doing stuff that would be similar to business processes at my house for myself, I do enjoy that. Like on this,
Hmm.
and
Well,
something
you
I wrote.
mentioned standard operating procedures.
Hmm. Yeah, and I like that for things I am interested in
Hmm.
because I want them to go well and I want them to be consistent. That's important to me. Being accurate and consistent, even in a workplace, I can end up caring very much about that.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of procedures and different things that are not actually useful that happen at job places and don't actually provide a ton of benefit. Or
So, so it's almost like 8 could be interesting business processes and
Mhm.
16 could be boring business processes.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. And you were talking about being detail oriented. Like,
Hmm.
I don't love editing text. Like,
Uh-huh.
you were talking about emails and stuff, but I'm pretty detail oriented when it comes to editing my writing. Like, and I can focus and do that. I
Hmm.
just about things I don't want to be focused about or detail oriented about. It's very easy for me not to be, especially if I just want to rush through it.
Hmm. And I think I've defined at least email for myself. I try and think of it as practicing writing,
Hmm.
like an opportunity to practice writing.
Hmm.
And so for me, that's why I think I take it a little bit most of the time. I mean, there are certain times when it's just kind of, oh, I need to get a thought out. And so, and I've got something else that I is more important for me to be doing at that time, or higher value for the company for me to be doing at that time. And so,
So you would define writing as one of your skills and something you're interested in increasing your percentile, right?
yes,
But you don't journal. You don't value it.
I don't journal, but I do blog.
Okay. Let's let that one go for now. uh was there anything else in here that you wanted to chat about? A number, a
Yeah.
percentile in particular that you saw that seemed high or low?
I'm curious how I'm always curious how people define logic.
Yeah, so just and this is actually I would say a fairly recent, well, no, no, no. So my interest in it, I would say, is more recent, but I've been like discussing a problem, solving a problem with somebody, but that would be so close to logic. I don't know why I differentiated them.
Okay. Because so how I've been trained is logic is inductive and deductive reasoning.
Yeah, so there are times when I'm listening to somebody talk
Hmm.
and I've read enough about basically invalid arguments to identify when somebody's making a straw man argument and say like that doesn't like that actually doesn't hold it like so
Hmm.
using some of those more like
Fallacies.
named fallacies, yeah,
Hmm.
exactly, um as and even when I see somebody who has an opinion
Hmm.
and it seems ill-founded or like they don't even know why they hold that opinion, usually
Hmm.
I like to poke and prod a little bit, and I would say that that's uh that's related to logic in some way,
Right.
and in some circumstances that's been to very much to my benefit, and in other circumstances very much to my detriment.
But in both cases, you enjoy the process.
um I usually in the moment, with the detriment maybe less
Right.
so
Right.
at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Like in the moment, you enjoy the process.
Yeah, and I'm just drawn to that, which I know not everybody who knows me likes me. And I think that's one thing that people who aren't huge fans of mine would say that's annoying.
Well, so it almost sounds like in that realm, kind of like with your writing, you actually are detail oriented, where you are focusing in on the details behind the assumptions that people are coming in with when they make statements,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
peeling apart the yeah,
Like, what do you mean when you say that?
right.
And questions that are annoying if you don't want to think.
Well, those are the questions that got Socrates killed.
uh yeah. We are the Socratic hobbits though, so
That's fair.
actually I told a good buddy of mine about us today. He's like, "Oh, I'll give it a listen." And
Yeah.
then as we were talking, he was like, "Oh, you guys are small people asking big questions?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, downloading it." I'm like, "Can you skip the first one for me?"
I think I've started telling people to basically wait till episode 9.
Oh, really? You're just gonna keep like we get a lot better. We get a lot
Yeah.
better at things. Uh, why 9?
Um, I feel like at 9 we started to get a little bit more in the same vein as we are
No,
in this episode, which it could be at episode 20. I'll say, don't listen until episode
19 or
19.
18.
Yeah.
Oh boy, yeah, yeah. Well,
But
at
that's
a
part of the
certain point,
journey.
hey, it is, and I like that you just said it. You just blessed my heart a little bit when you said when we get to episode 20. That's nice. That was nice. So, was there any others that you wanted to talk about here?
Yeah, I was curious. So I know you have experience with door-to-door sales, and in a sense, you've also got experience with kind of personal or resume job hunting sales. And
Yeah.
I'm glad
Okay.
you enjoyed that.
Yeah. No, that was good. It's just like I was telling you about. Never mind. Go on.
And 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 so I noticed that sales was down your list, and you feel like the difficulty to increase your ability there is pretty high. And I'm
Hmm.
curious if you have a very particular view. Kind of, it seems like on a number of these, you've got the heading, but the heading has a lot of uh, bullet points underneath it that kind of really define the heading. And if you change those bullet points a little bit, it could be something that you are either are much more interested in or much less interested in. So I'm curious what your bullet
Mm.
points are for sales.
Uh, bullet points for sales. I think probably when I wrote that, I was thinking of my handful of direct experiences with sales, which is that I have to be really on, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a better way to say it or a more concise way, but I am genuinely like generally rather a happy person, pretty
Mm-hmm.
upbeat at work, but I definitely like I've taken personality tests that compare work to regular life,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people who I've taken that with like don't see people as widely different as I am. It's unusual. Like I'm basically an
What's an
introvert.
example of one of those personality tests?
I'll have to send it to you. I got like a one that I was in this leadership group, and the leader essentially paid for everybody to do it. It's normally like $100 or $150 test.
Okay.
But basically, I'm an extrovert at work and an introvert at home,
Okay.
which but it's when I did door to door sales for 6 months, I was dog tired every day.
Right.
um, just at the end, it was like I didn't want to talk with anybody. I didn't really want to be with people. I kind of just wanted to like listen and watch when I was with my friends. Like I didn't really want to engage in conversation a lot because
Right.
I talked all day for a living.
Yeah.
So being in sales, I guess I don't know exactly what it would be like. Um, I guess I would honestly like rather try to sell my books when I write them after I write them.
Right, right. And I guess that's what I was wondering is if you were thinking specifically of the experience of door-to-door sales, however many hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about how sales as a category is far broader than that. You can have people who work on one business deal a month, and they have one client that will make several $1 million for their customer, and you only get a couple of those a year. And so you're working on maintaining a good relationship with that one client, making sure that they feel well served
Mm-hmm.
by your company. Then there's sales that combines writing, whether that's direct marketing or copywriting.
Yeah. See, that I have tried and am not interested in. I know for
Oh,
sure.
interesting.
Yep.
So you have tried copywriting.
Hmm. Yeah, it's that difficult. I mean, it pays basically pennies to begin with, unless you're very good at it. And I don't have the right like background in order to really get a job doing that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably the way that I do use my sales skills right now is like business to business stuff at
Right.
work. And I have to be pretty quick on my feet. Pretty much, I have to negotiate. And and so it's not that I would consider those skills related to sales, stuff that I got
Mm-hmm.
because of sales, but those handful of clients that you have a year or handful of deals that you have a year, um, those kinds of jobs typically involve a ton of travel.
Right. Yep.
And circumstances that I'm not particularly interested in. Like I know somebody who did that kind of stuff and they ended up like kind of schmoozing clients and like going to bars, getting drunk, and like that was part of their job was to
Mm-hmm.
like basically show the client a really good time. And I'm not saying every sales job is like that.
Right. Yeah.
So
Um,
anyway,
I'm actually curious to delve into your foray into copywriting a little bit because I'm curious how long was this
it was
foray?
probably like 3 months where I tried to like find copywriting gigs, apply for them on freelance or
Okay.
Uplants, and then not get the
Upland.
job and not make any money.
Okay.
So it wasn't. I mean, I spent enough time doing it that I don't think that that's. I probably so one of the things as I like the main difference between 2 and 3 in my
Mm-hmm.
difficulty increasing is 2. I feel like I know the steps forward
Mm-hmm.
to increasing that, and 3 is where like I don't necessarily know what I need to do in order to be better at this.
Mm-hmm. So you
And
didn't necessarily like go to any small businesses like that, like your dad's businesses, and say, "Hey, could I write up a email for you to send to your current clients to tell them about a deal on oil changes or something like that?"
no, I didn't do that. That would have been maybe smart. I don't think that my dad does business that way though. I for right after I graduated college with an accounting degree, I was like, Dad, here's like 15 things I can do to make your life so much easier. And
Uh-huh.
he was like, Nah, I'm good. I've
Yeah.
been doing it this way for 35 years. I think I'll keep on keeping on. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
And I'm not saying necessarily
No, no, I
for
know.
him, but just as an example.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I just yeah. Let's talk about you, Kyle. Let's talk about your skills.
I think one of the skills I enjoy is we talked about this a little, well, we talked about how we were going to talk about this
Uh-huh.
at one point, which was how I enjoy being a wingman, which is
Yeah, what is it? What do you mean when you say that?
what I mean when I say that is I like connecting people with opportunities that suit them well. And
Hmm.
so I enjoy the process of understanding what someone wants and what someone can, how someone can serve, and then connecting what they want to do with what they're able to do.
That sounds exactly like sales. You're just connecting people who with needs who with people who have a product or service.
And that's how I'm, and that's kind of where my question about sales to you came from is I was thinking, well, there are a lot of things that aren't door to door sales.
Oh
And
yeah, absolutely. I had a friend who tried to get me hooked up with somebody who did pharmaceutical sales. It's like you have no idea what kind of money you can make. I'm like, oh, it's not the whole. That's not the whole
you can
reason to
make a
work.
lot of money than that.
You definitely can. Yeah.
Schmoozing doctors,
Yep. Selling vaccines, making big pharma some money.
opiates.
Yeah. Yeah. Full pizza too. Anyway.
Not to go too dark there, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's an experience that you've had being a wingman? Which I typically think of somebody who's trying to get his buddy a date at a bar, or not a date, but we're gonna say date.
I have not at bars, but I have done that at dances.
That's sleazy, Kyle.
It was a lot of fun.
You know what do you know what I'm referring to when I say that?
I know what you're referring to, and it wasn't
It wasn't that.
that.
That's good. No. So you've gotten your friend a date, or at least to talk to a girl, probably.
Just to talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
She declined.
Kyle, what? So is that your only experience being a wingman? Is getting your buddy a chance at a date?
No, I've also, I'm trying to think if I have any examples of,
You're trying to get David to move over to Idaho and work at your company,
well, he's not the only one,
and me, and probably others.
and others, yeah.
Who else?
Um,
Who else are you trying to get the whole Bible study to come over?
um, it's actually other people,
Oh, who I don't know.
but yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, I haven't necessarily succeeded at getting anyone into. I'm trying to think if I've connected. Well, I sort of helped. I gave James some ideas that ended up getting him in Pullman.
Oh yeah.
And then That's the only one that's coming to mind is like, oh, that actually kind of worked.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to someone actually at church yesterday and mentioned a small dairy, and he's kind of a middleman for high-end restaurants between boutique
Farmers.
yeah, farmers and high-end restaurants. And so he's like, oh, you should tell me their names. And it was funny because his wife actually knew the people.
Oh yeah.
So I was kind of like, well, I guess I'm off the hook there. She can get you their info.
Yeah, no, I actually like connecting people who would be a good fit for each other is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. That's something where, when I've had a handful of good experiences with contractors, and
Hmm.
when I do, I am definitely sure to recommend them.
Right, right.
Like I had a fantastic experience with a HVAC guy coming to our house and fix something that a different contractor broke.
Yeah.
And that was like, and he did all the work that I wanted him to for a really reasonable price. I was expecting to pay double and told him
Yeah.
that. And he was like, no, 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 no.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this is a rabbit trail, but you bring up HVAC, and whoever did the HVAC in our house, they they're kind of janky, but they yeah, it did not give me a very high opinion of people who do HVAC work.
This guy, I don't know if you could get him to come out there, but if
Probably
he
not.
did, you'd be happy. Um, yeah, it feels like you and I are slowing down a little bit right now. We have been talking for about an hour and a half or an hour and
Oh
15
wow.
minutes. Yeah. Well, we started
Oh
pretty
no,
close to,
hour 15.
yeah, we started pretty close to 8. It's 9:15 now.
Which, which probably means we have about an hour of content.
Well, last time we talked for an hour and a half and we're down to 57 minutes. But there was a pretty big section. I mean, yeah, if you want to call it now, we can. I guess as kind of this is a different part to that same kind of question,
Yeah.
which is like, I'd be happy to start if you would want, and then or you can. But how did you come up with the things that you were good at, and then how do we then turn those things into a something that's helpful and not just an exercise to find some things that we're good
Yeah.
at?
So I mean, the mechanical engineering one was fairly easy. I've spent a decade working on that formally. And then the teaching is something that I've had opportunities to do. I've had opportunities to coach lacrosse and mentor a few times in the work setting, and I've enjoyed those opportunities and found that I can generally get pretty good results for the people I'm responsible for there. And then I've been continuing to try and develop that with the jujitsu I've been hosting at my house. I haven't done it the last month just because of various craziness of schedules and stuff, but looking forward to getting that back up and running full time in the new year. And then the writing actually comes back to something a teacher from high school said to me when I was graduating, and she basically said, "I know you're going in engineering, but I'm pretty sure at some point you're going to end up doing something with writing." So that's always
Guy
that
stuck with you?
stuck with me because she was like, looking back on it, the best teacher I've definitely top 3 in terms of teachers I've ever had, if not the top teacher I've ever had.
Hmm.
Like
What was what's her name?
Trudy Marston.
Yeah,
Um,
we can send this to Trudy.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so
Just had a big impact on you.
yeah, well, and it's the kind of thing where I didn't appreciate her nearly as much as I should have, and the further away I've gotten from school, the more I've appreciated her. And it's
Mm,
always fun to when I do see her these days to talk to her, and she's just really incredible in terms of the impact she's had on both students in school, and then she's run a women's Bible study for years
mm,
at her church.
yeah,
That's had a significant impact on a lot of people's lives.
probably mostly women from the Bible study.
Well, and whoever they marry.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so kind of to break down what you said as far as the skills go, you like what you're formally trained in,
Yeah.
uh, what you've enjoyed, and then some external like you're good at this.
Right. Yeah. That breaks it down very well.
Okay.
Nice job.
Thanks, buddy. Uh, as far as me, what I did was, yeah, I mean, I guess things definitely fall into those three categories. The writing is something I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Microsoft Excel also, and I've also for the Excel and writing, I've had external people, people outside of just me say, keep at that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then for the rest of this 24 long 24 list of items, um, I just sat and thought about
Mm-hmm.
things that I enjoy or things that uh, I feel like I'm good at, or I've gotten other people suggest that I
Mm-hmm.
am. Um,
This isn't a quip. This is a serious question, but did you journal about it?
no, I didn't. I mean, I think um, depends on how you define journal. Like that, making that spreadsheet, I sat and
Mm-hmm.
thought about that for probably half an hour, um, and going through each of those, what I felt like would be helpful columns. I'm not exactly sure how I'll combine those in order to figure out if there's something that I'm particularly well suited for. I think the job that I'm doing right now, actually, um, I am particularly well suited for
Mm-hmm.
estimating. I don't know if it's a forever thing, but like I'm making a lot of changes at our company now and shoring up. I'm systematizing, not business processing. Um, but it is stuff that I'm interested in, so it's helpful. But yeah, I think one thing that people can do in order to come up with this list is actually just sit and think, as opposed to having a list. Maybe there's a framework like you had kind of talked through about what would be helpful. What are those super skills that are in that show note, or what
Right.
will be in the show notes. But also just sitting and thinking about what you enjoy and what you would like to be good at
Mm-hmm.
is helpful, because if there's a natural, it's just a lot easier to get good at something that you enjoy doing. So one thing that I'm at some point will actually improve on is the woodworking, because I enjoy doing it.
Right.
Um, and that's something I've been doing for over a year now.
Yeah, one thing that kind of to go off of what you said about think about things that you really enjoy doing. One of the things that our top fans dad told me once was to think
Oh
about
man.
those things that those earliest memories that I have and think about why I have those earliest memories.
Hmm, that's an interesting idea. Yeah. One of the reasons that journaling is helpful is because it forces you to sit and think about is to clarify your thoughts, right?
Right.
That's it's actually like one of the main, I've heard somebody say, I don't write to get my thoughts down, or I don't journal to get my thoughts down. I journal to get my thoughts. And if you can sit and think, then you're bypassing some of that. It's a different exercise. I think journaling is still helpful, but I get the impression from other people and from my own tendencies that people hardly ever sit and think without input from outside of themselves, whether it's conversations with other people, podcasts. Like I can remember like a year ago somebody saying like, man, I recently decided to turn the radio off in my shower, and it was so peaceful. And I was like, what? Like, I mean, maybe everybody does. Maybe I'm the only guy without a Bluetooth speaker in my
No, it's
shower.
funny you mentioned that because I was actually just thinking about, oh man, I could listen to all these podcasts in the shower and bathroom in the morning. And then I thought, wait a minute, I don't want more input. That's a terrible idea to add more input to my life.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, anyway, so it's just like I would just encourage, as you're trying to think through these things, like actually, like thinking does not just mean writing something down and then saying, "Up, I thought about it." Like
Hmm.
actually spend the time, sit without any input, and let your mind work on a problem. Think through things that think through these memories in your past, or input that you've had from other people saying, hey, that thing you did was good, or
Hmm.
maybe you should never do that again. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, one way or the other. Can I actually tell you a funny story? You mentioned our number one fan's dad.
Yeah.
Maybe I've told you this before. It was so funny to me. So he taught me Sunday school. I don't know if you knew that.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't recognize him. This was after I was in college. I was over at their
So you went
house,
to the Church of Christ for several years?
the First Church of God.
First Church of God, yeah.
Yeah, I went to First Church of God. That was where we grew up. That was where I grew up until I was about 12. Anyway, and he had mentioned something about either one of his sons being in my grade or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to figure out basically if he had taught my Sunday school class. And I was asking how old his sons were or what grade he taught or something. But he took it to mean how old are you? and and mind you, I haven't seen him in like really like 20 years. And he was so confused and his wife was so confused. And it was really awkward for about a minute. And then we had a good laugh and figured out that I was in neither of his sons, any of his sons. I guess he has three. There's
They're
three of
great
them.
people for a good laugh.
They are great people for a good laugh. Anyway, so
I'm curious, when did you said you spent a half hour putting together that spreadsheet?
mhm.
What time of day did you do it? And did you think about what time of day you were doing it
It
and
was at
what the
12:30
environment was?
properly. Or I don't know why I said properly. It was at 12:30 exactly. No, I wasn't really thinking about what time I did it. That was just when I was on my lunch break and I had half an hour to.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And you like first of the morning or first of the last thing I go to bed?
Well, I was just thinking about I think it was Daniel Pink that wrote When,
Hmm.
about, have you read that book?
I've listened to it. Does that count?
That's more than I've done.
Okay.
I listened to the podcast where he promoted it.
Oh,
But
me too. I listened to that one too. It was good.
yeah,
I listened to it in the shower.
at least you weren't on the toilet. But
We digress. We should
yeah.
probably end this here pretty quick.
Yeah.
I know that I have
Yeah,
to
I was just
cut the first
curious
20 minutes
if you
though.
if you thought that you would get a different list, or how that list might change if you did it in the morning or did it in the evening, or had a nice coffee while you were
Doing
right
it.
before you did it or while you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I learned something frustrating from that book actually. And we are getting off topic, but that's okay. We'll just keep blazing this trail.
I don't know that
Um,
we are actually, just to push back on that. I
oh,
think it
nice. You used
is
my phrase.
it is it is helpful to talk about how we assess ourselves and the ways that we can serve. And it's not just important to talk about what those things are, but how we get there. And you kind
Mm,
of led the way to talking about how we get there. And I think thinking about the environmental factors that can lead to deep thought and introspection um, are really applicable to this uh, discussion about what can we be 75th percentile in,
hmm.
and what should we pursue in terms of what should we pursue for being 75th percentile.
Yeah, so the frustrating realization that actually is applicable here is that I would be so I am more creative and I like writing creative fiction in the evening because I'm a morning
Mm.
person. So if I were to be a full-time writer, it would make the most sense for me to get all of my boring stuff out of the way probably until about noon and then go on a long walk and then spend my afternoons writing. That would probably be like the most ideal schedule for me. And then write until about 6, um, or dinner time, whatever that is. Uh, and maybe do editing in the morning. That would make the most sense. But I used to get up in the morning and write. And part of why that didn't work was because I was most awake and alert and you basically can follow lines of logic the best.
You're too critical.
Too critical, exactly. So if you're trying to figure out what you're best at, figure out whether you're a morning person or an evening person. Or there's a third bird as well. I don't remember what it is, but like night owls, morning birds, and then there's a third bird,
Hmm.
which maybe makes you useless because you're only awake for like an hour at noontime. I don't know. So if you're a morning person, you should probably work on this list in the evening when you're not as critical and
Mm-hmm.
you'll come up with more ideas and they'll more of them will be bad, but you're also more likely to think about something that you you don't self-edit near as much.
You don't have filters.
Yeah, your filters are down. There are other ways probably to get those filters down, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend them. You only want them to be a little down. So, anyway,
So your creative writing is best with a little bit of bourbon?
I actually haven't had liquor in probably, I don't know, probably been 3 months, 4 months. So basically what I had been doing was every once in a while I would have a double at home with my wife, and
Uh-huh.
this last time, it's June, July, something, it ran out and I just didn't buy another, and at least I don't think there's any in the house. I haven't had any in a really long time. I have had beer though. Yeah. So it's not like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Is it Oh, it's sober. It's not sober November. Sober
I don't
October,
know.
right? That
I
Joe
don't know.
Rogan does and everything. By the way, I'm not listening to Joe Rogan anymore. You wanna know why?
Why?
Because Spotify doesn't won't load the episodes. They did this $100 million deal with him, and there's a huge portion of people who can't listen to his stuff.
What?
Yeah, if you have a VPN on your phone, it doesn't work. Full stop. No audio, no video.
How much does a VPN for your phone cost?
Mine's $5 a month.
Okay.
We can talk about it offline. Hey again, it's Daniel. I just wanted to say thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please write your mayor a thinking of you card. Or maybe write a review on iTunes. I don't know if that does anything or not. Sorry, I just grabbed, I had 2 cups here. One of them was tea and one of them was something else. And the something else was from a couple days ago and it just tasted terrible.
Was it caffeine or was it
I
just
think it was tea, but it's so gross.
it's just been steeping for a little too long?
So terrible.
Well, at least you're awake now. See,
Oh
this is why
no.
we don't normally do the podcast in the evening, because Daniel normally falls asleep, but I don't think he's going to fall asleep tonight, folks.
I'm sorry, Kyle. Would you begin again?